Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Friday edition of the To The Point podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. We're here at the end of the week, obviously heading into a weekend where a lot of things are happening. March Madness is going to start up again tomorrow. Got a slew of NHL and NBA games, UFC 260 tomorrow night, which I'll get into. And baseball right around the corner. So a lot happening in the world of sports. And today we're going to talk about a bunch of things. NBA trade deadline, things I like, things I didn't like, teams making some surprise moves that I didn't expect to see yesterday. The Orlando Magic basically committing to a full tank, full rebuild, if you will, and trading away all their best players yesterday. The Toronto Raptors keeping Kyle Lowry, which I'll get into and into great detail. Some of the NHL action from last night, the Philadelphia Flyers, just the disaster that it's been there for the last month. Mika Zibanejad and his fantastic play against one team this year where he's really had a slow start, and also dive into some playoff races where teams who looked out of it are back in it. And are they for real? Are they pretenders? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens today. We'll see what happens moving forward and towards the future. So I'm going to start with the NBA trade deadline and talking about Kyle Lowry. Toronto Raptors, Kyle Lowry, I mentioned yesterday, he's regarded as one of the best players in franchise history. Again, if you're a fan of the team, he's probably the best player in franchise history. When I think of best players in franchise history, I think the best player. I don't care how long the person was there. So to me, it's Kawhi Leonard, but that's, apples and oranges. Kyle's been there forever. He's won a championship. He'll have his jersey retired, all of this. But, the Raptors have lost 9 of their last 10 games. And prior to Wednesday night, they had lost 9 straight. And the team's just, it's had problems. It was reported that Pascal Siakam and coach Nick Nurse had a verbal altercation after Sunday's loss, that Siakam was fined $50,000 from the team. That was later said he was not fined. However, the team did not say that the altercation didn't happen. So I looked at this team and just straight up, they're not good enough. If they make the 8th to 10th seed now throughout the end of the year, way to go. Bully for you. You'll play Philly, you'll play Brooklyn, you'll play Milwaukee, and you'll get ousted quickly in the playoffs. But I looked at this opportunity, and Kyle Lowry, you could keep him through the end of the year. He's a free agent. And even if you say you didn't trade Kyle Lowry and you bring him back, I don't think it's the right move. And I'll get into that. But, the big news, they didn't trade him. They go through the deadline. It was reported throughout the day. Philadelphia, right in the mix for him. The LA Lakers emerged, and his hometown, the Philadelphia 76ers, Miami Heat. Those are the 3 teams. It was reported that the Lakers offered Dennis Schroeder and a slew of others and a pick. The Raptors wanted Horton Tucker, who's Taylor Horton Tucker, who's really emerged as a good piece for them. They like him as a young player. He's still developing. They were unwilling to part with him. Miami's offer was Duncan Robinson. I'm sure they're willing to throw Kelly Olynyk in the deal and, a first-round pick. The Raptors wanted Tyler Hero. I understand that. Tyler Hero out of Kentucky in his second season looks like he's going to be a star. Ended up getting 29 points last night in their loss to Portland. So were the offers fantastic? No. I mean, Philly was ready to give up, Maxey and Thibault, potentially Danny Green, pick swaps. And the Raptors wanted more. And I don't think it's the correct move because Kyle Lowry, sometimes you got to look in the mirror. Kyle Lowry's 36. Is he going to get any better? Probably not. He's 36 years old. He's maxed out his potential of what he can be as a pro. You know what he is. If he goes through the rest of this year, he'll play the rest of this year in Toronto. You're going to re-sign Kyle Lowry as your starting point guard at 37 years old. He's not going to sign a 1-year deal with this team that he's invested all this time into. They're going to have to give him a 2-year pact. I'd be shocked if he accepted a 1-year deal. If he's not offered a 2-year deal, he will walk. Mark my words. And even if you re-sign him, you have him at 37 years old at a point guard, and this team's going to be in the same position. And maybe because they're back in Toronto and COVID's gone, they'll finish 5th in the Eastern Conference. And then, all the, Toronto analysts on Sportsnet and TSN say, oh, look, I was right. Well, were you really? Okay. You still got Pascal Siakam. You got OG Anunoby. You got Kyle Lowry. You have a nucleus of the team that you had this year. And way to go. You got 5th in the East. But you lose in the first or second round. You're not winning a championship with this roster. And that's the ultimate goal. You have Masai Ujiri as your president. He's a big game hunter. And I don't think Kyle Lowry's a good enough player to win it, to be a point guard of NBA championship team anymore. You look at the teams that last year, the Lakers, you could say that they had Rondo, but LeBron's their point guard. LeBron's still the best passer in the NBA. He's their point guard. Steph Curry, again, elite scorer, but they had him as a point guard, or you could say Draymond Green. Again, both better than Kyle Lowry right now at this point in his career. I look at Philadelphia, the team that was looking to acquire him. Ben Simmons is a better, he's a point guard. He can play power forward, he could play center, but he came into the league out of LSU as a point guard. To have a 37-year-old carry that. Point guards play a lot of minutes. Your starting point guards do not get off the floor a lot because they are the general. They're the floor general. They bring the ball up the floor every time. They're more important than any other person on the floor in an NBA game. Because if your ball movement stinks, if you're getting a lot of turnovers, it's mostly because of your point guard, because he's got the ball more than anyone. And I think the Raptors fell into the Toronto Maple Leaf trap. And forever, whether it was John Ferguson Jr., whether it was the Horacek days where, the Leafs, the Salute Gate, and, Brian Burke and not wanting to part with Phaneuf and all these guys that he loved, they kept Kyle Lowry for sentimental reasons. That's the only reason I can see it, because re-signing him, he's going to want at least $30 million a year. I'm telling you, because he'll get that in the open market. So that means the Raptors will at least have to match that offer to keep him. And it'll be so celebrated that I can see it now. If he does come back, it'll be, mid-August, because it's pushed back the free agency. News will break, Kyle Lowry returns to the Raptors, and every analyst, every pundit will say this is such a great thing and it's such a great deal and woo, bully for the city of Toronto. But again, they're falling into the trap of sentimentality. They love Kyle. He won a championship. Again, I'm not a fan. I'm a sports fan. I'm not a fan of any particular team. I look at the teams and say, how can you win? That's all I care about. Pro sports, there's winners and there's losers. And I think this is a loser's move. Teams, again, could have the Lakers thrown in Horton Tucker in the deal. Sure. And you could say that's a fault of the Los Angeles Lakers. They're a team without LeBron, without Anthony Davis right now. They look horrible. Horrible. And they could drop in the standings with both of those players missing multiple weeks. And they don't really have a pure point guard without LeBron. They have Dennis Schroeder. He's more of a two guard. Again, he's more shoot first, score first, than pass first. They could have tried to acquire Lonzo Ball. I mean, they had him originally. They could have tried to trade for Rajon Rondo, who they had last year. The Clippers beat them to it. But so there is fault on the other side, of course, teams saw the same thing that I'm seeing. We got a 36-year-old guy, and if we trade for him, he's likely going to want us to sign him to extension right away, which is what I said yesterday. And if I'm a team and I say, okay, I have to give up assets to trade for Kyle Lowry, he's not just a rental. I have to sign him to 2 years and then give him a $30 million contract. That doesn't sound that inviting. That doesn't sound that great for that organization. I lose future prospects that could be better players than Kyle Lowry, and I'm getting a guy who's going to play this year. If we go to the finals, that's a lot of basketball. He's already played a lot in the last couple of years, and he's coming back with the tread on the tires, being a 37-year-old, wearing down in the back nine of his career. That doesn't sound that great of a trade. Was he the best point guard available? Yeah. And, another point guard didn't get acquired either, Lonzo Ball. Again, these guys are both really good passers, really good players. But I think the Raptors just got hoodwinked by the Maple Leafs. Forever, the Maple Leafs would not trade Matt Sundin, Pavel Kabina, the Muskoka Five that they refused to part with, Ponikarovsky over the years, where they gave all these guys no movement clauses. And they basically told Kyle Lowry, what it tells me is they really want him back. And I think that's just a mistake. Because unless they bring Kyle back and Masai Ujiri, who's not under contract for next year, the president, he could walk. Unless you trade for a superstar, which is what they did with Kawhi Leonard, you're not winning. Period. The Raptors will morph back into the baby dinosaurs, which is what they were referred to as forever. They were kind of a joke. They're just a good little team. That's what they'll be. A good little team. They'll be the Orlando Magic. They'll be these teams that are a playoff team, no doubt. The Milwaukee Bucks, forever, were just a good little team. They get into the playoffs. People dispose of them in 6 games, but they get the 7th or 8th seed, and there's no fault in that. And again, the Raptors are going to have this mystique in Canada of being this team. They still have OG. He won a championship. They got Pascal. He was on a championship team. Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet. But there's this person that was there who's now playing for the Clippers named Kawhi Leonard that people seem to forget. And the Raptors had the 2nd best record in the NBA last year. Fantastic. 2nd best record. Really impressive, just behind Milwaukee. But, and there's a but, you get to the playoffs, you face the Celtics, you lose to Jason Tatum, because Jason Tatum's right on the cusp of being a superstar if he's not one already. The Raptors, when the game was on the line, they didn't know who to give the ball to. Siakam didn't want to take the shot. You could say VanVleet, but he's a smaller guard. It's a tough matchup for him. OG, no, not happening. Again, Kyle Lowry, he's never been a big shot maker. When it's come down to the wire, who took that shot against Philly for the win? Kawhi Leonard. Who took free throws at the end of Game 6 to close out winning an NBA championship? Kawhi Leonard. So I think it was time to really consider saying this team just isn't good enough. And I'm not saying you have to trade away everybody. I think OG's a really good piece. I think VanVleet's a guy you keep on your team. But Kyle is a guy on the back 9. He's not going to get any better. And the price that a team's going to pay for him is only going down starting today. So I think that was a big mistake yesterday. Teams could have offered more, but I understand why they didn't. And I think the Raptors are going to look back at this and say, we messed up. We should have I would have took, quite honestly, I likely would have taken Duncan Robinson from the Heat and, their package of picks. Because at least you get a shooter. You trade away Lowry, you can play VanVleet at point guard for the rest of the year. You insert Duncan Robinson, you're starting lineup. You see what he can bring. He is a restricted free agent at the end of the year, so I understand you'd have to trade him. You'd have to sign him and pay him. But, MLS prints money. That shouldn't be a problem to give a guy a contract if you want to win, which maybe is the bigger question here. Second biggest story of the day, really, Orlando Magic have been struggling all season. They've been a perennial playoff team for 3-4 years. They've always been a 7th or 8th seed. They've actually played the Raptors the past 2 years in the playoffs, losing in 5 and 4 games respectively. But they've been having a tough season. After a really hot start, it's gone south for them. Tuesday, one of their star players, Aaron Gordon, came out and requested a trade. And, I thought he'd be moved. I thought maybe the Boston Celtics might dive in on him. But it wasn't just Aaron Gordon that was moved yesterday. They moved a lot of their core pieces in their starting lineup, and they've committed to a full rebuild here. So Aaron Gordon was dealt to the Denver Nuggets. He was traded for Gary Harris, who's a small guard, good 3-point shooter. not a great defender, but a good player. RJ Hampton, he's their first round pick last year. Um, a guy that Orlando can hope that they can develop. We've seen them take players that, were late round picks and turn them into good finds. So they do have a good development program down there, and plus a 2025 first round pick. For Denver, this gives them a third option. They have Nikola Jokic, who is an incredible center, might be the MVP so far this year. You got Jamal Murray out of Stratford, Ontario. We saw them in the bubble last year. They made it to the conference final. They've had an up and down season. I think they're a better team than their record shows right now in their play. They've lost Michael Porter Jr. to injuries and inconsistencies. They were hoping he'd take a step and be that third option. I think trading for Aaron Gordon is a clear indicator that they're not comfortable with him being the third option. They don't trust that game in, game out he'll be there for them. They got Aaron Gordon now. They have a three-headed monster, so to speak, and they won't be afraid to use to go against anybody really in the Western Conference. So good move for Denver. It proves their team a lot. And Aaron Gordon gets opportunity to go play in the playoffs and compete for a championship. Orlando is not done. They traded veteran guard Evan Fournier to the Boston Celtics for two second round picks. Fournier he's a solid defender. Again, he's a good 3-point shooter. He's not a splash player, that's for sure, for the Celtics. They made two moves yesterday. They acquired Fournier. They also traded their starting center Daniel Tice for Mo Wagner, who plays for the Washington Wizards. His brother Franz plays for the University of Michigan right now in March Madness. So Fournier, looking at their team, he'll come off the bench. I look at Boston; they should be in the buyout market when it comes to a guy like Andre Drummond. They'll also have to see what happens elsewhere because some trades did not happen. So they need a center. It would really help their team. Wagner does play center. He can stretch the floor. He can shoot the three. So he's a guy. This is his third team already in his career. He started with the Lakers, then went to the Wizards, now with Boston. Looking at the roster right now, they could play Tristan Thompson at the 5, but I wouldn't be surprised to be Wagner in the starting lineup. But, Gordon deal was big, and then they made another huge move. They traded their multiple-time All-Star power forward Nikola Vucevic to the Chicago Bulls for Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr., who's a former first-round pick, and a 2021 plus 2023 first-round pick. Vucevic is a really good player. He can play in the post. He can shoot outside. He was averaging over 26 points a game for Orlando. Was an all-star this year. And it's kind of a surprising move because Chicago Bulls sit 10th in the East right now. 10th, there's a play-in this year, so 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9. So we'll see, but it's a big move. They're a team that's kind of been in the 10 to 13 range in the Eastern Conference for multiple years. And I think this is showing that they want to take a step forward. They have Kobe White. They have Lauri Markkanen. They have some good players in place. And Vucevic automatically becomes their best player, but they automatically become, a much better team. This guy, he owns the paint. Like I said, he can get his outside shot, and he's one of the more underreported stars of the league because of playing in Orlando. This might put Chicago back on the map a little bit. I like the move a lot for them. And for their coaching staff with Billy Donovan taking over and their new GM after firing, doing a whole rehaul of their basketball ops last offseason, it's showing the players that are in place right now. We're not afraid to add to this team. We want to get better. They're trading away first-round picks in 2 of the next 3 years. I mean, that's a gamble, but they're saying Vucevic can really help this team. I think they believe they can be a playoff team. And they're going to battle with the likes of Atlanta, with the likes of Charlotte, who have lost LaMelo Ball, so they're precarious right now. The Knicks, Raptors. So I like the move. And for Orlando, like I said, they've been a playoff team for the last number of years, and they're putting up the for sale sign, And they still have guys like Terrence Ross under contract. I'll be interested to see if they do have any buyouts, because some veteran guys that are there are not going to like it. I mean, Aaron Gordon's gone, Vucevic gone, Evan Fournier. It's going to be slim pickings the rest of the year for Orlando. Young guys will get an opportunity to play, but if for a veteran guy, like Terrence Ross, who's been a great bench player for them, been a spark plug, I wonder if they can agree to a buyout and he can, move to a contender and compete in the playoffs. There's some other moves yesterday. Victor Oladipo was traded from the Houston Rockets to Miami Heat. Miami couldn't get Kyle Lowry. Oladipo, he's on an expiring contract. They get Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley in return. And for Miami, he is a guy that can get hot. They have a really good team in place already. I mentioned Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic. So they're going to be a playoff team. They're a threat, making it to the NBA Finals last year. Oladipo just creates another tough matchup for teams where they could probably will start him, but they could bring Hero off the bench, which is what they like to do more. He can come in, score a bunch off the bench. And I like the Heat a lot. Again, they made the finals last year. They have the same nucleus of players, and having Oladipo in there will only improve the team. But that was the main day of the trade deadline. Again, JJ Redick was traded to New Orleans, to Dallas from New Orleans. He's a three-point shooter. The Mavericks have started to find their game. They've surpassed the San Antonio Spurs. They now sit 7th in the Western Conference. So teams are going to buy players out in the next couple of days. Andre Drummond will be bought out by Cleveland. I'm sure we'll see some more as the days go on. So players will still be moving. For the most part, rosters are set. And now it's just about placement and getting into the playoffs. I mentioned the Lakers. They're without their two best players. They've lost their first two games without them, and they haven't really been close. They play, again against Cleveland tonight with Denver getting Aaron Gordon. Can they get some momentum? They're a game and a half back of the Lakers. Can they surpass them before Davis and LeBron return? So these are some of the big decisions to come. What's going to happen? I forgot to mention the Raptors did trade Norman Powell to the Portland Trailblazers. They got Rodney Hood and Gary Trent Jr. in return. They trading Norman Powell for these two. Gary Trent Jr. is similar to Norman Powell, where he can get really hot and he can make a lot of shots and put up 35. And then there's a game where he'll put up 5. So they traded a similar player. Norman Powell on an expiring contract. Rodney Hood is a guy that I could see the Raptors buying out. He's been kind of a journeyman in the league. He's bounced around teams, and they might not want him the rest of the year. But he could be a guy that they play and use to try to make the playoffs here late in the season. But that was the trade deadline. A lot more action than I thought we'd see, but good theater. And whenever there's a trade deadline, whenever there's player movement, it's always interesting. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way with the likes of the Raptors, with the Chicago Bulls making that big adjustment to their team and maybe their timeline when it comes to being competitive. Pivoting to the NHL. That brings me to the Philadelphia Flyers. Last week, they lost 9-0 to their rival, the New York Rangers. And you think, okay, how could these get any worse? Their goaltending, Carter Hart for the past month can't stop a cement truck. Brian Elliott's come in relief. He can't do much better. Their defense core has been terrible. A week and a half ago, Philip Myers and Travis Sanheim were -6 on the night. Really just terrible. So they get the Rangers again last night. They lose 8-3 to the rival Rangers. Mika Zibanejad had 6 points a week and a half ago in the period. Hat trick, 3 assists. He didn't get in a period last night, but he got a hat trick and you got 6 points last night. Same stat line, 6 points last night against the Philadelphia Flyers. I think Alain Vigneault's a really good coach. I mean, he's gotten 2 different franchises this Stanley Cup final. That speaks for itself. But come on. And again, goaltending is one thing. Shane Gostisbehere came out last night and said, well, it's not in our goaltending. Our defense, we stink. We can't box out in front of the net. Okay. How about you box out then? I mean, you're part of the problem. You're on the ice last night, 8-3. Embarrassing. And at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, this defense core struggling a bit. They lost Matt Niskanen. He's a glue guy. He's not a skill player, but he was really good with Ivan Provorov. They miss him. They're going to find a way. They haven't. It doesn't matter if you're from New Brunswick. It doesn't matter if you're from Bangladesh. If you're not getting it done, you're not getting it done. I look at the pair of Sanheim and Philip Myers. They wanted those guys to take a step this year. They haven't. They've taken 2 steps backwards. Again, Philip Myers from Moncton got paid. Hasn't been as good of a player. I think they're asking him to do too much. But at the same time, you're making that money. You look good last year. What happened this year? Sanheim, and I look at Sanheim and Myers. On paper, they should be a really good pair because Sanheim's not a guy who likes to insert himself offensively. Myers likes to he's more of a riverboat gambler. He'll take some risks. It hasn't worked. Provorov looked fantastic last year. And I think that was really the first year he's looked great in the NHL. I think he's got a lot of notoriety for being a really good player with, mixed bag of receipts. He's hasn't looked great this year. He's playing with Justin Braun. Braun is a 5th, 6th defenseman playing in a top pair. It doesn't always work. It sometimes, I understand the thinking. Mark Mathot worked with Erik Karlsson. Mathot wasn't a top 4 defenseman prior to playing in Ottawa. He knew his role there, and it worked out swimmingly for that pair. But I look at the makeup of the Philadelphia Flyers. You have a stud net in Carter Hart. The guy's lost all his confidence. Last night he lets in 5 goals and 11 shots. Pulled in the first period. That can't happen. But you look at a couple teams that have been struggling lately. The Calgary Flames, they got a new coach. They had a wave of success. And you get the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia's had the same nucleus of a team forever, and they've never won a cup. Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, Brian Elliott's been there a while. Sean Couturier has been in Philadelphia a long time. That's your core. You can mix and match on the bottom of your lineup. I'd even put Provorov up there because he's still a young player, but he's been there long enough. And your horses, the guys that you rely on to be game changers for you, just aren't. My sister told me last night, Claude Giroux's having another baby. Great. Try to score a goal. Try to do something. I mean, the only reason that Philadelphia is still alive in this race is Boston had some COVID problems, and they've been inconsistent as hell too. But, I mean, Philly, it's a disaster. And if they miss the playoffs, which I think I'm going to mention teams that are kind of jumping up the standings and getting in playoff races, Philly's falling out of it. And they're letting the Rangers back in one, but the Rangers are murdering them week after week here. If Philly misses the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if Alain Vigneault's fired. I don't think that's the correct decision. He's only been there a few years. Again, I don't know if he will be or not, but I mean, he's not the goaltending coach. I mean, he can't help the fact that Carter Hart has, a hole in his glove and his blocker's made out of flour. He can't really do much about that. But you're not going to fire your star goaltender that you have so much promise in. It's going to be the coach. So if you know anything about sports, he'll probably be fired. Again, lateral move in my opinion. But you got to look at this team and at your core and say, we've had these guys forever and we haven't won a fucking thing. Nothing. And again, teams go through stretches where you never win anything. And I get that. But, for a while, Pittsburgh and Philly were like this. Giroux played Crosby in the 2012 playoffs, if you recall. Who won that series? Philly. Philly's beaten Pittsburgh twice out of their 3 meetings. Crosby drew straight up. Drew's won 2 of the 3. It's impressive. But did you go on to win the cup after that? No. And over the years, could you have added more talent? I'm sure. But it's about your horses. Sidney Crosby's played with lesser players his whole career by design, by Crosby. Again, I'm not going to use that narrative. I'm just saying he's done more with less than Giroux. Is he a better player than Giroux? Yes. But Giroux, Voracek, these guys are elite players. It's a get-it-done league. And I look at Calgary with Gaudreau and Monahan, Elias Lindholm, your core. It's the same thing. In Philly, you miss the playoffs, you trade your captain. You find a way to get rid of him. Jake Voracek, again, these guys are only getting older and you're not winning. You shouldn't be this bad. Is it all in their top players? No. But is Scott Lawton going to take 95% of the blame for being a bottom line player? No. Is Michael Roth? No. It's going to be the top of your lineup. And Tampa Bay won last year. Did they make really good deadline acquisitions? Yes. Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, fantastic additions. But who won them those cups? Who won them the cup? Hedman, Point, Kucherov. Your horses win you the cup. Giroux, Voracek, Couturier, Van Riemsdyk, I'll throw in there, haven't done it. And if they haven't done it yet, and they're only getting older, and the league's only getting faster, they're never going to win it. So it might sound cold-hearted, but that's what you got to do. You blow it up. And again, committing to a full rebuild is a very difficult thing. Maybe Chuck Fletcher doesn't want to do it, but hanging on to a roster that's not going to win is just as precarious to me. Because you're saying you're relying on hope, which is a dangerous concept in life and in sports. Saying, I hope something happens. I don't like to live my life that way. When I say I hope something happens, you need to make it happen. And you're hoping that your elder statesmen, superstar players revert back to what they were even 4 or 5 years ago. That's not how you do business. If an employee misses work 5 out of 7 days, and you say, "Well, I really hope he shows up 5 out of the, I really hope he shows up 5 out of 7 next week," that's not good business. Would Warren Buffett tell you to keep that employee? Probably not. So, my advice to Chuck Fletcher: if you miss the playoffs, number one, try to keep a job, because you should probably be worried about that too. But then other than that, get rid of these spare parts. That's what these guys are now. Giroux, Voracek, they're not superstars anymore. And it doesn't matter what sport you have. If your horses aren't playing at a high level, you're not winning jack shit. And you'll just be another mediocre team that makes the playoffs and be bounced in the first or second round. Point blank. So I'd do something about it now, because even if this team does make the playoffs, I don't like them going on a deep run when your defense core leaks, your goalies stink, and your forwards can't do enough. I mean, last year in the bubble, they couldn't score against Montreal. Drew didn't score until the 4th game of the second round. Again, this is not just this year. Last year in the bubble, they were lucky to get by. Lose to the Islanders, a team so much less talented on paper. Just saying. Some interesting playoff races around the league. I look at the East. I've been dumping on Philly the last 5 minutes, but the Rangers, they've gotten success playing against Philly. They play again on Saturday, but they're now 3 points back of the Boston Bruins. Now, Boston does have a bunch of games in hand, but games in hand are only valuable if you win them. I think a lot of teams say, well, this team can't catch them. They got, 6 games in hand on them. Well, what if you just get into a bad rut? I mean, if you lose 4 of those 6, you're right there. So Rangers are 3 points back of the Bruins for 4th in the East. You're starting to see Zibanejad find his game. Ryan Strome's finding his game. Philip Hedl is starting to click. Shesterkin's giving them, solid play in net. Condre Miller. Adam Fox. This kid for the Rangers, obviously played in college. They signed him as a college free agent, originally drafted by the Carolina Hurricanes. They don't want to go to Carolina, went to New York instead. 5 points last night. I think this guy's going to be a star in the NHL. He's got all the makings of being a number one defenseman, a point getter, and a potential Norris Trophy winner. So just keep an eye on Adam Fox. If you want to watch the Rangers, they play tomorrow afternoon at 2:00 against Philly. Just tune in to watch 23 on the back end because he's worth the price of admission. Nashville Predators. Again, I don't think Nashville's going to make the playoffs. But they played Detroit a lot lately, and we've seen some inconsistent play from Chicago and Columbus. Nashville's 4 points back of Chicago for fourth in the East. They're right there now with Columbus because Columbus, they lose again last night to Carolina in overtime. And we see Chicago's actually had a good week. They've beaten Florida twice, so 2 solid wins. Patrick Kane's started to find his game again, scoring some points. So they're 4 points back. They beat Detroit last night 7-1. Rocco Grimaldi, really he's 5'6", little bowling ball. Had a 4-goal night. So that's back-to-back nights in the NHL with a player scoring 4 goals. That's pretty impressive. Pretty cool stat there. And the Arizona Coyotes. I had Arizona making the playoffs before the year, and they've been such a disappointment. But they're 4 points back of St. Louis. I'm starting to get worried about St. Louis. We see last night they play Minnesota, who's right there. I'll talk about that division in a minute. But opening faceoff, Braden Shen and Ryan Hartman have a great tilt. They go at it, and I thought it would spark St. Louis in the game. It didn't. They came out flat. They couldn't score a goal. Capo Kakinen, Cam Talbot have been really solid in net for Minnesota. They are now just 2 points back of Vegas and Colorado in the West Division. We've seen Kaprizov really take a step this year. Even Victor Rask, Nico Sturm getting the game winner the other night. But Minnesota is a team that's going to fight to the bitter end. And I think even if Bill Guerin may think it's not as great for the long term for this team to make the playoffs, they got a veteran group that's still, you got Spurgeon, you got Suter on the back end. Parise still plays with a lot of pride. They got a team that's going to want to make the playoffs. But Arizona, on the heels of St. Louis, and if they can get some consistent scoring, or if they don't trade away, they're great talented players at the deadline like Clayton Keller, Connor Garland, Alex, potentially Goligoski, Hjalmarsson. They could make it interesting down the stretch here. So I look at these 3 teams. The team I would say has the best chance of making the playoffs right now would likely be the Rangers, followed behind by Arizona. But, kudos to these teams for playing hard right now and getting back into playoff races. And it's always more interesting to have something to talk about down the stretch. Back to the Western Division last night, battle of the top 2 teams, Colorado and Vegas. Colorado has played fantastic lately. McKinnon with 12 points in his last 5 games. But Colorado beats Vegas last night 5-1 decisively. And my big thing is they tie them in points. So check mark there. They play again Saturday afternoon. But Colorado beats them 5-1 without Nathan McKinnon recording a point. We see Jonas Donskoy score. Cale Makar chipped in. Landeskog put up a goal. Liam O'Connor. But this team won without McKinnon being involved offensively. It's a big thing. Marc-Andre Fleury was in the net for Vegas. Phil Grubauer continues to play really well in net. I still have my druthers about it because the only games I've seen him play in the playoffs were the first 2 games against Columbus for Washington. He was pulled. They go back to Braden Holtby. Washington wins a cup. But Colorado's played really well lately. I think Joe Sakic will be looking to add in a trade deadline time. He didn't last year, should have, and it really cost him. A player I could see them targeting is Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall's had a terrible season. 2 goals. He's on the Buffalo Sabres where really, if you are a good player, you die there. You can't have the same success. They've lost 16 in a row, losing again to Pittsburgh last night. It's a wasteland in Buffalo right now. There are two new coaches, Don Granato, Matt Ellis, were just put on the COVID protocol list last night too. So it's just it's a disaster in Buffalo, just point blank. But I think they'll be active in the trade front. I don't think they'll add a goalie, but they want to add another scorer. And Taylor Hall is not scoring in Buffalo, but if you put him on a line with Nathan McKinnon, I like his chances a lot more of being a productive player. Maybe they go after a minor guy like Mikhail Granlund from Nashville if Nashville falls off a bit in the next couple of weeks. They could make some other moves as well. But I look at what's happening in Colorado and say they're tied with Vegas. You're right there. These two teams are clearly the two best in the division in my mind. But I think they can make it interesting in the playoffs. I think that series is going to be a must watch because I think it's going to be a physical one. You're going to see a lot of emotion. You're going to see Vegas try to play their style. Colorado try to play a more fast-paced game where Vegas will want to muck it up a little bit. And I kind of hope Colorado adds to these two teams coming to the playoffs, firing on all cylinders, and they meet in the second round because I just looked at these two teams on paper and said, this is it. This is the cream of the crop when it comes to the NHL. And when I look at two teams going to meet in the playoffs before, a conference final or a Stanley Cup final, it would be the best matchup of any division in my opinion. But Colorado's finding their game, winning 9 of their last 10 and, beating Vegas, and they'll play again Saturday afternoon. So another good test and opportunity for both teams and see what they can bring to the table. And before I wrap up hockey, we'll tee up the weekend, but let's tee up finished on last night. Kudos to Sidney Crosby. 3 assists last night. He's now 8th in the NHL in scoring. He's actually tied with Austin Matthews with 37 points. He's playing really well lately. It seems to be kind of a trend for him in his latter years. Early on in the seasons, he's quiet, doesn't really do much. He'll have an injury here or there. But he always seems to find his game in the back half of the season. A big thing for Sid is, will he be able to find it come playoff time? Last year against against Montreal, really wasn't that impactful. The year before against the Islanders, he was held scoreless in 4 playoff games. So is he an elite player? Of course. Is he, a top 5 player all the time? Yeah. But in the past 2 playoffs, Sidney Crosby really has been a no-show for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I suspect they'll make the playoffs with Philly being terrible. Rangers, who knows? Boston still hanging on. It looks like Pittsburgh will be in the top 3. So I'll be interested to see what he can bring to the table after a couple of years where he hasn't been great. And it's probably hard to hear. It's probably very hard to believe that he's got 1 point in his last 7 playoff games, but it's the truth. So, getting points towards the end of the year, making the playoffs, that's always important. But Sidney Crosby would tell you this, and I'll just reiterate the point. It's about playoff time for him, and it's about showing up when you need him the most. And we'll see what he can bring to the table in May and June, and what ultimately happens with the Penguins season. That brings us to this weekend. We're going to see 2 series get started up. Leafs Oilers have a 2-game set. Oilers not having their game canceled against Montreal on Monday and then Wednesday, so that they're free to go all week. We'll see what happens there. Leafs played the Senators last night. I know Marty Brodeur, aka Jack Campbell, got another win, so kudos to him. But this is actually interesting because the Leafs played the Sens last night, and that was the Sens' 3rd game in 4 nights. And they were playing Anton Forsberg was in net. That's their 5th starting goalie this year. They win in overtime after a really bad play by Thomas Chabot. I think it's less of a good play by Austin Matthews, but I'll let the Leaf media hype up that great defensive play by Austin Matthews last night. And then, if the Oilers schedule would remain the same, they also would have been playing their 3rd game in 4 nights against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Toronto would have had 2 games this week where their opponent is on a back-to-back playing their 3rd game in 4 nights. The Oilers are going to be fresh. They're in Toronto now, so is Toronto. Both teams will be fresh. Can't say I'm really looking forward to this matchup. The first 5 or 6 have been really boring. And I like defensive hockey. Like I like watching the Islanders. So boring hockey to me is just no emotion, no check. Again, defensive systems for these teams aren't that great. I mean, again, I'll let the Toronto media hype that up. That's not my job to do that. I hope we see something. They play twice, Saturday and Monday. Hope we see something out of this series, because seeing nothing for the first 6 kind of drains on you. I'm sure McDavid will be revving to go. I mean, the one storyline I can say heading into this series, McDavid and Matthews are both tied for the NHL in the goal scoring lead. And, Edmonton trails Toronto by 2 points. So Toronto could get a sizable lead, 6-point lead if they win both regulation by the end of Monday night. So good opportunity for both these teams to get closer in points and see what they can bring to the table. But hope we see something from this series. And, great defensive play by Austin Matthews last night. It was okay. And really terrible play by Thomas Chabot. So bully to you. And we'll also see Jets Flames. They play the next 3 against each other. It starts tonight, back-to-back tomorrow, and then they'll play on Monday. Flames, they got 2 goals in their last 2 games. And clearly Daryl Sutter, he's got his system, and they believe they need to play a certain way. And I don't disagree with them. Opening up, they did that before with Jeff Ward. It didn't work. And I just think it doesn't matter if it's Daryl Sutter, Jeff Ward, what it's showing about the Calgary Flames as they're trying to crawl back in the playoff race is that this team's just not good enough. Johnny Gaudreau, again, it's the Philly thing. Your best players have to be your best players. And too often, Gaudreau and Monahan are figure skating out there. They're not doing what you have to do. Mark Giordano, really good player, won a Norris Trophy. The guy's 38. You're asking him to play a ton of minutes. That's tough. Rasmus Anderson, Doug McLean always says on Real Kipper at noon, he's a kid. Well, he is. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's probably a 3-4 right now, and you got him playing number 1 minutes. That's tough. When he's not ready to do it, don't fall into the Toronto Maple Leafs trap. Noah Hannafin's really emerged under Daryl Sutter, really played well. But I look at you got to score goals. And for Daryl Sutter, they want to play that system. And, he's kind of said in the media, it's a race to 2, meaning 2 goals. It's really hard to win when if you get more than 2, you're screwed. I mean, you're going to play the Winnipeg Jets, who have a higher powered offense. But I'm interested to see what the Jets do tonight. What do they have offensively? Can they get through the Calgary wall, so to speak? We see Ottawa beat them in low-scoring games. Can the Jets play that style? That'll tell me a lot about them when it comes to playoff time, how they deal with a team that's checking, plays heavy, so to speak, and it will gear them up for teams outside of the North Division. Quite frankly, the team that would do that the most, other than Calgary in this division, would be Montreal. But you look at Toronto, you look at Edmonton, you're not going to get that heavy type game. That's just not the way those 2 teams are built. But, playing against Calgary, they're not elite scoring, but it does give you an opportunity to play against a team that's not, freewheeling and, bad pinches and things like that. So just a different style, and they start a 3-game set. So that'll be intriguing to watch this weekend as well. And finally, this weekend, it's UFC 260. And, a lot's changed. We've had some COVID problems in the UFC lately. They've had to cancel some fights. Alexander Volkanovski was supposed to defend his belt against Brian Ortega. That's been canceled. Volkanovski actually has COVID, so they have to reschedule that fight. Likely the winner will face Max Holloway. Volkanovski, if he beats him, would be the trilogy fight where he's beaten Holloway in their past 2 meetings. But the headline fight this weekend is, Francis Ngannou against Stipe Miocic. Miocic hasn't fought since August when he beat Daniel Cormier when he retained his belt against Daniel Cormier, and Daniel Cormier retired for the heavyweight title. Ngannou hasn't fought in a very long time either. He's been waiting for this opportunity. These guys fought a year and a half ago. Miocic got the better of Ngannou. It really was a boring fight, and Ngannou really took it personally because he lost his next fight to Derek Lewis, But since then, he's been on a tear, winning 2 fights in the first minute. And the thing about Ngannou is he's big, and it only takes one punch from him. Miocic can knock guys out too, don't get me wrong, but Ngannou maybe has the most lethal punch in the history of the UFC. Derek Lewis would be right there with him, but Ngannou it literally looks like he's going to kill people when he's throwing punches. And Miocic has to watch out for that, because Miocic is the better fighter, I'd say, just technically when it comes to ground game, all around fighting, Miocic is better. But Ngannou is such a lethal fighter. And with that right hand, or going southpaw, he is so dangerous. And I'm so excited for this fight tomorrow, because the winner's going to face John Jones. John Jones fought at light heavyweight forever. He's moved up to heavyweight because he just wants to prove he's the best ever. And, Dana White's basically said John Jones gets the winner of these two. So that'll likely be set up later into 2021, hopefully this summer. I'm sure Dana wants it as soon as possible, where he can get, fans in the building and start to get revenue back when it comes to ticket sales, admissions, beer, what have you. But these two guys can both throw. Miocic has been one of the best heavyweight fighters in the history of the sport. He may be the best. And Ngannou, he gets his second chance at Miocic, his second chance to win that heavyweight title, which is, all he's ever wanted. And, Ngannou has been on Twitter having beefs with John Jones. I think that would be the more intriguing fight. I'm sure Dana White would love to see Ngannou and Jones go after it. Jones's first fight at heavyweight being against Ngannou, one of the most lethal punchers. Pretty good selling point. And, with COVID getting, brought down with vaccines in the States, if you could load up the seats in Vegas and have Ngannou versus Jones, say mid-July, I think that would sell pretty well. So that's this weekend. That should be a lot of fun. There's also news. It was announced that, Michael Chandler is going to fight Charles Oliveira in mid-May. I think it's May 15th for the vacated title by Khabib Nurmagomedov. He retired. Dana White said last week, he's confirmed it. I'm not trying to get him to fight anymore. He's done. These two are going to fight for the title. I'm fine with Oliveira. Michael Chandler's fought one fight in UFC. He knocked out Dan Hooker in their last fight. But Dustin Poirier, I look at Dustin Poirier, he rejected a title fight to go fight Conor McGregor again. Their third time. I want to see how much money he makes, because then I'll reverse my statement here. But I think it's idiotic that you're not fighting for the title and you want to fight McGregor again for your trilogy fight. If the money is astronomical, then okay, if that's what your main ambition is, that's fine. If that's what gets you motivated to the gym, to work out, what have you, and you want to, beat Conor McGregor again, okay, that's fine. You beat him in the second round last fight. It really wasn't that entertaining. And I honestly think you're gambling saying that people are going to buy this Conor McGregor fight as much as they did his past couple. He fought Khabib. He got his ass kicked. Was not close. Was a one-sided fight. He fought Poirier, and it was a 2-round fight where Poirier, you could say the first round, McGregor may have got the best of him. I'd say close to a wash. The second round, it was all Poirier, and it was over rather quickly. And unless he's getting, $10, $20 million guaranteed up front, and you're relying on pay-per-view buys to really be the selling point, that's a gamble. Because if you do that in mid-July, are people going to buy it when the weather's good and it's sunny outside? And how much money is going to be brought to you when McGregor's track record in the past couple of years have been, this guy's a loser. I'm not saying he's a loser at life, but just a loser when it comes to in the octagon. Oliveira Chandler will likely be a great fight. But again, Chandler's only fought once in the UFC. Oliveira's won 8 in a row. He deserves it. I think he should be fighting Poirier, quite frankly. But Poirier doesn't want it. He should fight Justin Gaethje. And then if Chandler wins another bout, say he fights Tony Ferguson, or you get him Makhachev, who's looked really good. You give him another fight at lightweight. If he wins that, he gets the winner of these two. But just handing him a title opportunity, I think that's the biggest problem with UFC, is that you don't earn title opportunities. Chandler beat Dan Hooker in the first round, yes, but he was at Bellator where he had all his success. Gaethje fought Khabib and lost for the title, but you're fighting Khabib. The guy's never lost. You should probably give him another crack at Oliveira if Poirier doesn't want the fight. But I think we're seeing Poirier ducks out of a heavyweight fight to fight Conor McGregor. It's the marketing of UFC is great and terrible at the same time. How they market Conor McGregor is fantastic because he's a larger than life character. But you look at other fighters like a Poirier or even Oliveira, who's actually will likely be the lightweight champion in a couple months' time. You know nothing about him. And is there the language barrier? Of course. But learning to market all different kinds of people is something I think the UFC needs to do a better job at, because it's going to create more global interest, and it gets people that speak English interested in these other guys, that don't speak English, but just make them characters that you can enjoy. Not everybody has to be the notorious one where half of what comes out of his mouth is bullshit, and in the other half, he's in the ring and he can't deliver. So I'm looking forward to the fight this weekend. A lot more coming from the UFC. Always some great cards upcoming with even great fight nights. So I'll keep you guys all posted on that. But like I said, March Madness back tomorrow at 3:30. Loyola Chicago, Oregon State kicks it off. Bunch of afternoon hockey games. Games tonight: Washington, New Jersey. You got Jets, Flames, Blues, Ducks. So lots to keep your eyes and ears on. But I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a MLB season preview show. Just talk about everything from around the league. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm going to be doing an interview with my friend Dominic Cormier. He's played for the Moncton Flyers. He's played university hockey. He's played in the QMJHL. He's currently playing in the East Coast Hockey League. So I'm going to be doing that interview on Sunday. So keep your eyes and ears posted for that, and I'll have that for you on Sunday. So enjoy the weekend. Be careful with the weather, with the snow and rain on the horizon. But everybody, thanks for this support. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.